Hello everyone, welcome to Zobrio University's webinar on MIP security. Today we have Kathy Dwyer, a senior application consultant here at Zobrio, to lead the webinar. If you have any questions, please leave them in the chat, which is located at the bottom of your screen. We will go over all questions at the end. Thank you, and I will now hand it over to Kathy.
All righty, well thank you, Colleen, and welcome all. Appreciate taking time out of your busy days to spend a short period of time here to review subjects in the MIP module. Today we will be talking about security and just maybe review some pointers you already know and just kind of point out different things you can do with the MIP system. Okay. So I am, hopefully you see my screen, I am demoing off of on-premise, or what they call the classic interface with the MIP suite of software. I am in what they call the NPS training database, which is the database that automatically installs when MIP is installed on the server. Okay. So what I'm going to show you, what we wanted to focus in on this morning, is basically at the top row, there is a button for security. Okay. And depending on the different modules that you own, you might see all of these menu choices, or you might not see all of them. For instance, the ones towards the bottom, set up account level segments or set up account level security, those are for folks that basically, let me show you this, is under organization, and under system and activate license. This particular database is registered for all the different modules that MIP offers. What I was just referring to is this account level security is basically part of something called advanced security. So in the right-hand module, we're showing that this database has installed advanced security. And again, what that simply means is, from the drop-down perspective under security, if you own that advanced security module, you will see these two menu choices: set up account level segments and set up account level security. Okay. And then further, this database also has the e-requisition module installed. So there's a whole set of security that comes with the e-requisitions. I really wasn't going to touch upon that today. It's more of, let's swing up to the top where we have maintain users. Okay. Now, what ends up happening, of course, is you, as an administrator perhaps of the software, you need to have rights to be able to maintain users, or rights to maintain groups, or rights to maintain the system menus or the organization menus. Okay. So not only is there a component here of, do you own the advanced security or do you own e-requisitions, there's also the component of, do you have the right security assignments that allow you to maintain users. Okay. So let me go in there, and when we get down towards the a couple of menu choices down, I'll show you where the security comes into play that allows you to actually see these menu choices. So first of all, with maintain users, okay, what ends up happening here is there is a list of users in this database. Okay, I'm going to pick on this again as kind of an NPS user, is more or less a username that gets added when the system's installed. It can be used to access the training database. Okay, and what I wanted to point out here is you certainly can set up any number of users in this database. Your license does set you up so that you can have only so many users concurrently using the software. But even say that was a 10-user license, you can have 100 people in this list. It's just any combination of 10 can be working simultaneously. Okay. But what you'll see here is this user happens to be NPS. The status is either you're active or inactive. Okay. The username, okay, so you're logging in as NPS, but it's like NPS user is your full name. Okay. as you can see, there is a button here that allows you to change the password. And if you're a user with admin rights, you can do this for the user. You can come in here and change the password. And what makes this unique is you just can say new password and confirmation. You don't necessarily need to know the old password. We've got the email address here, which can be used for a couple of different functions in the software. One of them is something called an alert server, where you can set up alerts where, as examples, a vendor might have been inactivated, or an employee got a pay raise. And there's a whole component on these alerts. And the alerts can be what they either say in product, which is if you happen to see at the top line up here on the right, there's a little bell with the number 2. That's just indicating it was an in-product alert, which, why don't I just click on it? It takes us to the message center. And I only got a couple of them here, but it's just the idea with these alerts is you can either set them up for in-product, meaning show me with the bell at the top of the screen, or you can send an email directly to an individual that should be alerted. Okay. So one instance of why we would have the email address. Okay. Narrowing in a little bit more on building the user, you'll notice underneath the email there's 3 checkboxes for an executive view user, a requisition user, and an HR management user. And again, depending on the modules that you own, your business owns, you may see all these checkboxes or a combination, or maybe none. Okay. Essentially, an executive view user is it's not a full license. So when you purchase the software, an executive view user license is less costly because, as the name implies with the word view, it's basically somebody that you want to allow into the system, but maybe you only want them to run certain reports or display balances, but they won't be entering transactions or modifying any of your data. Okay. The middle checkbox as a requisition user, that basically, if you've purchased the e-requisition module, by identifying a requisition user, it allows us to get in that module, and there's a whole level of security within requisitions. And then finally, the HR management user checkbox. As we know, MIP has a payroll module. We also have an HR management module. Okay? And by identifying a user as being an HR management user, basically you can notice on the left side of the screen in the Navigator panel, the second one from the bottom, just above Help and Support, that's a quick link into the HR management module, which can also be accessed from an icon on the desktop, but you need to be identified as an HR management user to actually get into that module. Okay. And then likewise, once you're in the module, just like e-requisitions, once you get in there, there's another whole level of security that takes place within the module. Now, below in the kind of the grid type areas left and right, what ends up happening, this database happens to have, or excuse me, this laptop happens to have several different clients set up. And what you're really doing is you're, if you have a single database, or maybe you're a client with multiple databases, what you're literally doing is, and I'll just pick one arbitrarily, is you're literally selecting a database and moving it from the left to right. And what that does is it says, as the user NPS, when I log in and it asks us to select a database, NPS Training Organization in Town of Avon, those 2 databases are available to me to actually log in and select those databases. If for any reason you want to say, no, don't give that person rights, you just select it, move it back to the left. Okay? So moving left to right selects, moving right back to left deselects. So that's the first component of the user table. And do keep in mind, too, is up at the top here, you can have this rename user concept. That's also available. Okay, so if for any reason you want to maybe a misspelling in a name or whatnot, there is the icon for renaming a user ID. Let me go ahead and save that. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and close out because that's our first file or database we're looking at is the users. Okay. There's also this maintain groups. Okay, and what happens with that is this is sometimes you know, depending on the number of users, it might be just as easy to say, okay, I'm going to set Kathy up and this is her security. Then I'm going to set up Steve and that's his security, and then Wayne and Michelle, and I'm just picking names. You can set up security by individual. But there's also the concept of a group ID where various users are assigned to a group. And let me just, and you get to name these groups. You can have as many as you want, and you can name them. And what the concept here is with a group is a user, a single user, which it's usually the idea of multiple users, are assigned to a particular work group. Now, what that will allow you to do is basically, instead of creating security for person A, person B, person C, if they all share the same characteristics and you want to assign them basically the same security, you can build the security at the group level, and all the people that have been assigned to that group automatically get that security. Okay. In this instance, we basically have a group ID called AP, or accounts payable, and we can see from moving left to right, we have two usernames, the K-Dwyer 33 and NPS are part of this group. Okay, so there's no one way better than the other than the idea of if you have users that have similar characteristics, and you're dealing with a fairly big user base, it's probably easier to set up group ID security as opposed to individual security. Okay. Now, likewise, there's an icon in the upper left where if you do create multiple groups, or you've established a group identification and you want to copy it out and do some slight modifications, you can do that as well. So rather than building everything always from scratch, there is a way these copy commands allow you to basically get a jump start, much like our reports do. Copy a template, make modifications. Same idea here is you're copying an existing group and then modifying that group. Okay. I'm going to close here, okay, and back up to security. Okay. So that's, again, users are necessary, maintain groups are optional. Now, beyond that, and beyond establishing the users and optionally the groups, the next thing you'll see here is set up system menus and set up organization menus. Okay? And really what they are is they are essentially doing the same thing, except with the MIP software, we've kind of divided system functions like who can do a backup, who can do a restore, who gets to maintain users and security. Okay, that's really the system menus. Organization menus are more like, hey, who can maintain vendors, who can maintain AR customers, who can enter transactions and what types, who can post transactions. Okay, so one is more from a system or an overall, high-level view of the system. The other one gets kind of smacked down into the transaction or day-to-day operations. So looking at that, I'm going to go into system menus, and it basically, with the system menu, it basically works off of an individual ID as opposed to the group ID. Okay. I think the thought process is because there's less people that will necessarily be system administrators versus those that are going to be active users. So what I'm doing here is here within the maintain the system menus, which again, always keep in mind, you can look at the top of your screen, and in the top banner, it tells you what database you're logged into and that specifically what job you're running. Okay. what I did is I hit the plus sign to the left of each one of the tasks, if you will, like file, reports, organization, because what I wanted to do is open it up and kind of show you how granular the security can be, okay? So, and what I mean by that is under file, does somebody have the right to back up? Do they have the right to restore? Okay. Can they create a new organization? Okay. Do you want them running reports that includes lists of user information? Okay. So these are different system functions, and the way that you apply the security is if we can either select it, and I'm going to, let me say we can either select it way up at the top at the accounting level. We can select it, if you will, kind of within the category level, which would be file, reports, organization, or we can select security right down to the lowest level, which is the job. So what ends up happening here is if I say this NPS user, we want to give them the ability to back up, but not restore and not compress or any of these other menu choices, you simply click on the job backup, and then over to the right side of the screen, and kind of in the right margin, if you will, there's rights, okay? And as you can see, view existing records with an underscore V, or edit existing records underscore E, okay? These V, E, D, A, and P, that relates to what you see running horizontally right to the left of that, okay? So let me hit process just to show you what I mean. So with the backup now, as I read across and I see the letter P, V-E-D-A-P, that basically means we're processing. We have processing rights. Okay. Now, not all jobs that I select on the right side of the screen are going to give us the rights to view or edit or delete or add. It depends on what you're selecting. Okay. Because with a backup, you're not editing anything. You're not viewing anything. You're not deleting anything. You're simply processing a backup. Okay. Now, on the other hand, if I said lists, okay, what you're going to do is different boxes will have focus depending on, is it logical that when you run a report like a list, can you view it? Can you edit it? Can you delete it? Etc. So these 5 different, if you will, kind of action items, that's what you're selecting. And again, it can be right down to the job level that you see here. I could roll just by hitting the plus sign back on the left-hand side of the screen and rolling basically, I'm hitting the minus sign. I'm rolling those menu choices up. I can either assign security at this level, like I could come in here and say, yep, process here, okay, which if I expand it, then basically we have rights to all these menu choices. So granular, right down to the job level, a little less cumbersome to build security. You can do it here at, as I call it, the category level, or if you're a full administrator and you want to give rights right at the accounting level, you can do that as well, is just say, no, just go give me everything. And instead of going click, 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 click on every individual job and expanding it, it basically at the accounting level, and as I open this up, you'll notice that everything is checked off. Okay. All righty, and that includes, I mentioned earlier, is here down under security. This is where you'll see, can you maintain users? You know, can you set up system menus? So if you're a user that you don't see security on your screen or you don't have permissions to get in there, you need somebody that's an admin that will allow you to get in or set security so that you can then be the administrator of the security. Okay, hope that makes sense. All right, so that is the system menus. Okay, and again, I'll hit save. I think what you'll find again is this, and let me close that out. There's probably less people that have functionality within the system menu as opposed to the organization menu, okay, which with the organization menu you can either build by user, individual users, or by group, which again, these groups would have been previously established under security and maintain groups. But again, here with accounts payable, if I go by group, we, again, remember we assign people to that group, we can basically build security for multiple users simultaneously by using the group functionality. Okay. Now, again, what ends up happening is we can simply say at the accounting level, we can go over to the right-hand side and go click, 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 and give them full rights to everything. But probably more logically, you're going to drill in a little bit like this. And I won't go all the way down, but just to give you an idea, again, how granular this can be. Again, high level at the accounting at the top, or you kind of have categories, file, maintain, timesheets, transactions. And if there's any question at all about what does that mean, just basically expand on, anytime you see a plus sign, just click on it, and it will open this up, and you can see the individual jobs that you can grant access to. Okay. And again, for instance, you might be somebody, let them into the vendors, and they can view it, but maybe you don't want them, and maybe you don't want them editing or deleting or adding. You just want them to look at it, and perhaps you want to lock them out. This display sensitive data is typically tax IDs from the vendor file or Social Security numbers from your payroll file, your payroll employee file. Okay. But it is, quite frankly, it's a bit of a chore initially to get the security set up. Okay. And as you can see, it's right down here under transactions on the left-hand side of the screen. It usually opens up initially to GL transactions like cash receipts, cash disbursements, but then your sub-ledges like AP, AR, encumbrances, you just expand on it. And again, you can be very selective as far as do you want somebody to enter invoices, okay? Maybe you want them to enter them, but maybe you don't want them to post it, okay? So that's what the granularity of the security assignments on the right-hand side of the screen will do for you. Again, the idea that you can copy using the icon in the upper left-hand side, hopefully you'll find that if you build a group or you build an individual security, by copying it from, say, person A to person B, it gives you a jump start, and if person B has a little bit more functionality or a little less functionality than person A, you can always, because it's on an individual basis, you can come in here and modify it. All righty. So that, let me say that's kind of the menu security, okay? We've got, again, here with security, users, groups, system-type functions, day-to-day organizational, adding, deleting, modifying. Now, just to touch on a little bit more is the advanced security and what's that all about. Okay, I'm going to go in under account level segments. Okay, and really what you do is you can activate or inactivate account level security just with this upper checkbox. Okay, and then what the system does is it displays this grid of the different segments. These happen to be the chart of account segments in this database. Reasonably, your individual databases will be a little bit different. Okay, but what I'm saying here is if I activate this account level security, and in this instance, I'm going to just check the fund and the grant box. What that's going to do is, as you'll see down the bottom, is you can either use the allow access or deny access, meaning is it easier to create a list of funds that I, as a user, can access, or is it easier to create a list that denies access? Okay. Personally, I think in terms of allow as opposed to deny, but both of them are there. Okay. So this is what happens is this setting it up allows you to activate and select what segments that you want an individual user to validate against. Okay. And let me go ahead and hit cancel and show you what I mean by that. Okay. Back under security, instead of going to set up account level segments, I'm going to go to the Setup Account Level Security. So the first one says what segments I want to use for validation purposes. The second job basically says whether it's on a user or a group level, and I'll go user this time, okay? And I'm going to grab the NPS user. Again, what happens here is we've got a checkbox that basically says enable account level security for user NPS. And when they're doing data entry, what's allowable to the right-hand side of the screen is their drop lists or their data entry is only applicable for funds 1 and 4. Okay, I don't want them entering in, back to the left, we have funds 5, 6, 90, 98. We don't want to grant them permissions to enter into those funds, so we don't select them. Likewise, our second segment was a grant, called grant, and we only want this particular user to access grant 101 and 108. Okay, so let me show you, let me demonstrate the effect of that. I'm going to hit close. I'm going to come out of this database, and then I'm going to come back in. Okay, because I was in as admin. What I want to do is come back into this NTO database and basically demonstrate the security, that advanced security. Okay. So if I come up under here under transactions and let me go to journal vouchers, and again, this is applicable, if you will, to, I don't know what's in those sessions, so I'll ask for a new one. This is applicable to any transaction type when you activate the security, the advanced security. Okay. So just picking numbers here, and I'll just give it the word test. Okay. So this is where the advanced security comes into play. Okay. My drop-down for fund only gives me 2 options, because those are the 2 options I granted to user NPS. Okay. Likewise, under the grant segment, yes, I realize that. I'm working on it. Under the grant segment, it's woofing at me, but it's what happens is the same thing there under the grant segment. What is occurring is because I didn't lock me down, or this user, I didn't lock this user down to any particular specific GL account, I have a full list. Okay? I can have a full list of programs because I didn't lock myself down, or I wasn't locked into certain values. Okay? Let me see. There we go. Now with the grant, the fund and the grant are the 2 that I locked down. So what happens is that's all I can choose. And hopefully don't look at that too much as a negative. If I was a user, I like the idea of having restricted access because it's less choices and I don't get into trouble. Okay. So something to think about with the advanced security, and I'm going to tell it don't bother saving this particular journal voucher because I just want to demo the effect of the advanced security. Now lastly, one of the things that I wanted to point out basically is, well, let's not do that today. Down here under security, there is this Manage Audit Trails. Okay. It's kind of a handy menu choice that, as you can see, multiple selections here that allow you to basically see activity that's occurred in the system. Okay. And I'm going to just go into the summary audit and basically just open this up just to kind of show you, there's all kinds of filters that you're probably familiar with at the top of the screen. Okay. But from a summary standpoint, as what you'll get to see here is, and I'm just stretching some of these columns out a bit, what ends up happening is you can see the date and time on the left, the users that were logged in, and it basically gives you an idea of what was going on, okay? And it really, what it does is if you're looking for something like what happened here, or has somebody been working in the system, or just kind of auditing the activity that's going on in your system, this audit trail is kind of handy. It's often overlooked because it's not something that you have to do all the time. It's not a requirement to print your AP checks or get a payroll out or set up, do an AR billing or anything like that. The audit trail is just really something to play a little bit with and just get an idea of what the system's tracking, whether it's by individual or whether it's, you set it up to do a little bit more detail. Okay. And as you can see here, this is under the setup. It's basically asking with a check mark certain things. Do you want it? It doesn't necessarily track, like towards the bottom, doesn't necessarily track vendor changes, deletes, or whatnot. You can activate it just with a check mark. And then what that will do is anytime a vendor is changed or anytime like an employee is changed, it's going to put this out into the audit trail. And if you're looking for a problem or perhaps just what happened here, the audit trail will basically keep track of what was occurring in the system. Can't go wrong just by looking at, again, that was under security and under audit trails, and again, you do need to have permissions to get in there, but it is through the setup system menus that will grant that permission. So that basically concludes what I wanted to talk about today, is just if you will, a quick high overview of the security possibilities in MIP. If any of you folks have any questions or would like to talk about it, I can be reached at Kathy with a K, .Dwyer, D-W-Y-E-R, @Zobrio.com, and be happy to talk to you more about it. In the meantime, thank you for attending, and we'll see you next month.
Thank you everyone for joining us. A recording of this webinar will be made available shortly.